Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's just dive right in. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder what you're made of? Like, really made of? Not just flesh and bone, but at the absolute most fundamental level. Well, today we are going to uncover the hidden microscopic universe that makes up literally everything alive on Earth. We're going to break down the incredible architecture of life itself. So, think about this. What do you have in common with a microscopic bacteria and a giant towering tree? It kind of sounds like a trick question, right? But the answer is actually the most unifying fact in all of biology. You, the bacteria, and that massive tree are all built from the exact same fundamental building blocks, cells. Whether it's a single-celled organism just chilling in a hot spring or a wildly complex human being made of trillions of cells working together, the cell is the basic level where life happens. Now, it took us a remarkably long time to even realize this hidden world existed, mostly because of the limits of our own eyes. The absolute limit of human resolution is zero point 0.1 millimeters. That means if you hold two tiny dots closer together than 0.1 millimeters, your naked eye just blends them into a single dot. And cells? Yeah, they are usually much, much smaller than that. It wasn't until 1665 that a scientist named Robert Hooke rigged up a self-designed microscope to look at a super thin slice of cork, and through his lenses, he finally saw these tiny box-like compartments, and he called them cells. To really grasp the impossibly small scale we're talking about here, think about the numbers 7 to 10. What does that mean? Well, every single cell is surrounded by a protective barrier called a cell membrane. And that membrane is structurally insanely thin, just 7 to 10 nanometers thick. To put that into perspective, 1 nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. It's a completely mind-boggling scale. Yet, this unimaginably thin boundary of fats and proteins is the exact thing that defines the individuality of the cell and protects everything going on inside. Section 1. Inside the Cell Factory. A bustling micro-world. All right, we are officially stepping through that ultra-thin membrane and into the cell itself. And spoiler alert, a cell is not just some boring fluid-filled blob. No way. It is a highly coordinated, incredibly bustling microscopic factory. To understand how this tiny factory operates, we've got to define a crucial term, organelles. Organelles are specialized subcellular structures. Basically, think of them as the different departments in a tiny living factory, with each one doing a very specific, absolutely essential job to keep the whole operation running smoothly. They just float around in a semi-fluid jelly called cytoplasm, working together to build materials, clear out waste, and, keep you alive. So let's take a quick rapid-fire tour of the factory floor. First up, the nucleus. This is the headquarters. It's a double-layered vault holding your chromosomes and DNA, basically the master-coded instructions for literally everything a cell does. Next, we have the Golgi apparatus. This acts exactly like the cell's post office. It modifies, sorts, and packages proteins and lipids into little vesicles to be shipped off wherever they're needed. And finally, well, every factory produces waste, right? That's where lysosomes come in. They're the cleanup crew, tiny sacs packed with enzymes that break down damaged parts and unwanted junk so it doesn't just pile up. Section 2. Mitochondria. The cell powerhouse. Now, a factory absolutely cannot run without electricity, right? And a cell cannot run without energy. You have probably heard this phrase echoed in science classrooms all over the world, the powerhouses of the cell. It's practically a scientific catchphrase at this point, but it is entirely accurate. We are, of course, talking about mitochondria. They are the true, literal engines driving every single thing you do. So the million-dollar question is how they actually generate all this power. Well, inside the mitochondria, glucose from the food you eat gets broken down to release energy. This process is called cellular respiration. What's super cool is their physical structure. They have this inner membrane that's folded into finger-like projections called crista. And these folds massively increase the surface area, giving the cell way more room to pull off the complex chemical reactions needed to actually produce that energy. And the final product of this incredible powerhouse? It's ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. You can basically think of ATP as the cell's energy currency. Just like you spend cash to buy things at the store, the cell spends ATP molecules to pay for almost all of its cellular activities, everything from contracting your muscles to building brand new proteins. Section 3. Plant versus animal cells, an ultimate showdown. Okay, now that we know the basic organelles, we need to compare the cells that make up your body to the cells making up the plants right outside your window. You'll notice an immediate glaring visual difference. A typical plant cell is highly structured. It's very boxy, almost looking like a hexagon. But the animal cell, it's rounder, squishier, and much more irregularly shaped. So why on earth do they look so completely different when they share so many of the exact same organelles? Well, it really all comes down to lifestyle. Animal cells only have that ultra-thin 7 to 10 nanometer cell membrane we talked about earlier, and that makes them incredibly flexible. Without a rigid outer layer boxing them in, animal cells can change shape easily, and that flexibility is exactly what allows your tissues to stretch, your muscles to contract, and your whole body to move, jump, and dance around. Plant cells, on the other hand, have a fixed shape because they possess a rigid outer wall. They literally have to stand tall and withstand the environment. And because plants live such drastically different lives than we do, they have some special equipment that animal cells completely lack. First up, chloroplasts. Since plants can't exactly go grab a snack, they have these built-in solar panels containing green chlorophyll to synthesize their very own food straight from sunlight. Second, they've got a large central vacuole. Think of this as a giant storage tank for water and sap that creates internal pressure to keep the whole plant firm and upright. And third, leucoplasts. These are colorless structures dedicated purely to storing the plant's food materials, stuff like starch and oils. Section 4. The mighty cell wall, the cellular fortress. Think about it. Plants cannot run from the rain or the wind. If a huge storm rolls in, you and I can just run inside a house. A plant? It's stuck there. Because they are fixed in one single place, they need a permanent, rigid structure to withstand environmental stresses. It's an absolute, ultimate survival necessity. And this fortress wall is made primarily of cellulose, which is a super strong carbohydrate. This rigid wall is exactly what allows tiny little stems to push their way up through hard soil, and it helps delicate leaves and flowers remain totally firm and face the sun. But crucially, it also protects against water loss. Let's say a plant loses water due to osmosis on a really blistering hot day. The inside of the cell might actually shrink away, but that rigid cell wall maintains its overall structural shape so the whole plant doesn't just instantly collapse into a sad, wilted puddle. So, to wrap this explainer up, I want to leave you with a fascinating thought experiment. Based on everything we've just covered, what consequences would you predict for a plant cell if its cell wall were to suddenly become as flexible as a squishy animal cell membrane? Seriously, imagine a world where a giant oak tree had the cellular flexibility of a human cheek cell. It would be a messy, floppy, completely chaotic disaster. The microscopic structures we've explored today truly dictate the shape of the entire natural world around us. Keep questioning, keep visualizing, and I really hope this explainer helped to make the building blocks of life perfectly clear.